In the late 1980s, a young man named Quentin Dino took advantage of working in a video store to watch all kinds of old movies and Hong Kong shootout movies. He took inspiration from Chow Yun-fat's movie Dragon and Tiger, combining it with a color-coded heist movie Attack on a Subway, and wrote a script called Reservoir Dogs. Why is that the name? Because Quentin was still an obscure little transparent at that time, he felt like a dog locked in a reservoir, struggling to survive, desperately trying to see his script.
Out of frustration, I wrote Reservoir Dogs.
After watching, the biggest problem is lack of money. Quentin planned to collect $30,000 himself and use cheap 16mm black and white film to rent a warehouse with his friends to take photos. Quentin's good friend Lonsban, after reading the script, advised him to shoot slowly first, and he went for more funding. So Bender went around selling the script. At that time, an investor offered a high price of $1.5 million, which was astronomical for them at that time. The other party demanded that the ending of the script be drastically changed, and all the dead characters be revived, indicating that all this is actually a carefully designed hoax, which conforms to the conventional logic of Hollywood joy. Another investor is even more outrageous, deciding to invest $1 million, but on the condition that his girlfriend plays Mr. King. Marucci thinks this idea is ridiculous. Mr. King is an extremely murderous character in the film, and playing it by a woman with zero acting experience will ruin the whole film. In the end, Quentin and Bender refused all conditional funding, preferring to be miserable than to let laymen know about their films. At this time, fate quietly turned Quentin around, and Bender gave himself the script for Reservoir Dogs during acting lessons. His acting teacher looked at it, and his teacher asked him who the male protagonist wanted to capture. Bender mentioned the Harvey cartel, and coincidentally, Mr. Bender's wife happened to know Harvey, and thus the script was handed over to Harvey. Harvey was stunned after reading the script and loved the story so much that he decided not only to cast himself but also wanted to join the cast as a co-producer. With Harvey's name endorsement, the movie quickly got the investment, the money problem is solved, and the next step is casting. Although the filming funds are available, the crew is still so poor that they can't even save money to go to New York for casting. Harvey looked at it, and without saying a word, he directly spent his own pocket everywhere. Quentin and Bender flew to New York to host a casting
About 3 o'clock in the morning, we meet. You know, Harvey's in first class, we're in coach. We meet in the middle, and Harvey goes, boys, you know, someday you'll be in first class. But right now, when it's on my dime, I'm in first, you're in coach.
It was the platform that Harvey paid for this time that allowed Quentin to dig into the core lineup in the future. So many people wonder, why can Quentin dig so many outstanding actors as soon as he debuts? The reason is as simple as that. It can be said that Harvey is the most important noble person in Quentin's life. Without him, there would be no present Quentin. Casting-wise, Quentin tailored the character for himself, mister, as early as he wrote the script. The wonderful debate in the movie about non-tipping and the virgin-like in-depth interpretation of Madonna's songs are all written in his tone. However, although Quentin had this idea in his mind, he still had to do enough superficial skills as a director, so he still conducted the audition. As a result, Steve Buscemi arrived. The stop Buscemi made was the same as Mr. himself, the scrupulous man in the script. When Quentin saw Buscemi doing so well, he felt that this was really a feeling I couldn't play, so he made the decision to hand over the role of Mr. to Buscemi. To that end, the two also rehearsed a short film demo, with Quentin as Mr. White and Buscemi as Mr. Barr. Later, it was included in the special edition DVD of the movie, and it was Mr. Barr, Chen, an undercover policeman. Actor Tim Rose is British and has been filming in the UK. At that time, British cinema became popular with the sophisticated upper-class culture, which we often call manner drama. Men dressed in tuxedos and women in lace gloves, drinking afternoon tea in the beautiful estate. This is a disaster for an actor like Ross, who takes the route of grassroots realism and can't get the play at all. So Ross went to America at a desperate risk. As it turns out, the character is so right. When he arrived in the United States, he bumped into Quentin's Reservoir Dogs, and he found this crime film full of foul language, bloody violence, and extremely chatty to be his paradise. But Ross suffers from severe dyslexia, and he hates reading a script first and auditioning then. He likes to chat face-to-face with directors, for which he loses 50% of his job opportunities. But he doesn't regret it. This time, Rose still refused to audition, insisting on drinking with Quentin and Harvey. After a few hours of drinking alone in the bar, Rose took advantage of the drunkenness to grab the script and start reading. Ross had a natural sense of vulnerability as he read his lines in this drunken state. When Quentin looked, this was the undercover cop he was looking for, Mr. Chen, lying in a pool of blood from start to finish.
That's the only time I've read for years.
After playing Reservoir Dog, Rose was thoroughly established in Hollywood. Later, Pulp Fiction and the melancholy fragility of his C piano signs are all attributed to this film's excavation of him. Then there was Michael Madsen, who was a little hesitant at first because the character of Mr. Blonde was so perverted, and he himself was extremely averse to violence, so Quentin convinced him. As a result, the scene that later made a Kodo dance became the highlight of Madsen's acting career. Actually, Madsen was very miserable when filming the scene, because the actor who plays police officer Marvin improvised the line.
Please, I can't get me off now, please.
At that time, Madsen had just become a father, and he had a deep affection for his son, so this sentence was simply a blow to Madsen, and he almost couldn't play it at that moment.
And I knew that Michael had just had a child. At one point during the rehearsals, I came up with that line and I said, I got a kid now. And as soon as I said that, Michael stopped in his tracks. He just stopped, he turned to me, he turned to Quentin, he said, I don't want him to say it, and Quentin said, I like that, we're gonna keep it.
He himself was a career criminal and went to prison at the age of 17. He later wrote novels in prison, and when he got out of prison, he turned into a writer and screenwriter, and the wedding hall came to him for the feeling of a true criminal. Years later, Bunker was interviewed saying that the movie was simply unrealistic, that he would never rob with 5 strangers he didn't know, and that it was extremely stupid for the group to eat breakfast together in public in uniform black suits. When the news of the robbery comes out, witnesses will certainly remember them, because good guy Eddie's Chris Penn is the younger brother of Hollywood superstar Sean Penn. News Penn and Madonna have a high-profile marriage, and Chris Penn starts the movie eating breakfast while listening to accomplices teasing his ex-sister-in-law Madonna. This coincidence is like an Easter egg specially arranged by Quentin. Interestingly, after Madonna herself watched Reservoir Dogs, she gave Quentin a copy of her own album and wrote, "This song is not about the dirty things you said, but about love." Finally, Marvin, the unlucky cop. The actor who plays him is Kirk Pulse, and he is a particularly experiential actor. In order to show the fear of being kidnapped and tortured, he voluntarily asked Madsen to put him in the trunk and experience it. Madsen picked the potholes, drove the car like a roller coaster, and Wiles was torn in the trunk, and finally managed to perform the expression of fear and despair in the movie. Also auditioning for the role was Samuel Jackson, who was scrubbed, but it was this audition. Let Quentin remember Samir and directly tailor-made Jules, the sole character in Pulp Fiction, for him. From then on, the two began their collaboration for many years. The characters are done, and then the warehouse where the other large part of the plot takes place is actually a morgue, so it is full of coffins, and the crew can find the cheapest and most spacious location to shoot. After the release, many fans found that the number of coffins in the warehouse even matched the number of deaths of the characters in the film. Although it was probably a coincidence, this sense of destiny was truly full. The most confusing point in the film is that Mr. Bai will be safe if the police rush in for another 60 seconds. Why not? What about confessing to Mr. Bai that he was undercover? Many people thought it was a plot hole, and even wrote specifically to ask Quentin. Quentin's response is very direct. If you ask this question, you don't really understand the movie. He said no audience ever asked this question in Asia, because the values of God's confidant's death are deeply entrenched in East Asian cultures. A man does something out of morality and guilt, even if it leads to his own death. Mr. Chen owes Mr. Bai the truth, and that is what he has to do. After the movie is done, it's time to meet the audience. When this film first came out, it was a typical blossom inside the wall and fragrance outside the wall. The film grossed mediocre on US soil, but across the pond in the UK, it was the exact opposite. As soon as the movie landed in Britain, Quentin's cold humor and violent aesthetics directly hit the cool point of British people, and many British filmmakers were influenced. Therefore, we can see the shadow of Quentin in the later Two Big Smokers, deboning and robbing all over. After the film was released, there were many exit spectacles. At a screening at the Sitges Film Festival, the Gordo scene was played, and 15 people in the audience stood up and left, including the horror master Wes Craven. Wen Ningde was very unhappy afterwards, and publicly said that I really can't imagine that the director who opened Elm Street and Scream would not watch my movie. How do you not feel sick when you shoot those bloody abuse scenes yourself? What are you pretending to be noble? Craven later responded that my movie was about the evil and horror of violence. He didn't glorify violence. Your movie glorified violence. In the end, neither of them convinced the other, and this battle from afar became an endless topic of conversation in the movie circle. After filming Reservoir Dogs, Quentin went from a video store wage earner to a hot Hollywood genius overnight, but there was always a regret in his heart. He originally planned to make a prequel that connected Pulp Fiction with Reservoir Dogs, making Mr. King Rick Home and Pulp Fiction's Vincent Home. The story and plans of the two brothers have dragged on for too long, and by the time the real construction is about to start, the two actors are no longer of the right age to act, which has become a perpetual regret for fans.